by the state of Nevada, and as a minister of the gospel, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your very beautiful bride, and who God has put together. Let no one.
It was the summer of 1995 in San Francisco. I worked at Kaiser San Francisco, the intensive care nursery. I'm a respiratory therapist, and Victoria's a nurse. And so we met and we became friends. And so in fall of 1997, I was widowed and left with my two daughters because my wife died in a car accident. And so I decided within that moment to move back to Arizona where my friends and family live. So at that point, I was just doing my life and my kids. And in the fall of 1998, Victoria comes out to visit her aunt who lives in Phoenix, and gave me a call, and she said, "My aunt's driving me crazy. What are you doing?" I said, "Today," and I said, "Well, I'm going in the evening to this haunted town field, a scary field area," and I said, "Would you like to come?" And she said, "Sure." I said, "Bring your son, we'll go." And she met me there, and we were running. It was night, and it was so one of the best haunts I could say I've ever been to. And we were running around, everybody's scared, having so much fun, and all of a sudden we're running through this long cylinder tube, and as Victoria exits, someone pops out and scares her, and she falls back in my arms, and I caught her, and I felt all this warmth and tingling sensation, and I was like, oh boy. And so, I didn't say anything or do anything, and she went back to San Francisco, of course, after visiting, and her aunt, and I went back with my life. And then about 2 weeks later, I said, I think I really fell in love with this person. And so I wrote a nice romantic love letter, and the scary part about it was that I didn't hear back from her right away. It took her several weeks, and then all of a sudden when she called me, she said, "I just want to let you know that if this doesn't work out, we can't be friends." And I said, "Well, I believe it will work out because I feel like I'm falling in love with you, and you'll learn to love me as much as I love you." And so we proceeded, and during that time we were flying back and forth. She flew out from San Francisco to Phoenix. I flew from Phoenix back to San Francisco. And some of the times that I went to visit her, she gave me the tour around San Francisco and took me to the Coit Tower. We hiked the Golden Gate Bridge, and we hiked along the beach. And then when she came out to Phoenix, I took her to the Grand Canyon, and I hiked up this one peak in the city that's well known, and took her to a great restaurant. One of them particularly is the Salt Cellar. Love their lobster. Maine lobster is so good. Anyway, so during that time also of flying back and forth, we sent each other some love tapes, and I sent her a tape that had love songs like Al Green, "Let's Stay Together," which was one of my go-to songs for her, and then the other one was by Police, "Everything She Does Is Magic." And then she sent me one back. The two that I remember was "I Don't Want to Miss Something" with Aerosmith, but the hook, line, and sinker song was Bobby Caldwell, "What You Won't Do for Love." And I was like, oh yeah, this lady loves me. So and then we decided to let the kids meet, because if they couldn't get along, then really the relationship would be shot. So they got along, and then we talked about, I think it was already March, and we talked about, well, why don't you come out to live with me? And she said, "I'd rather come out and be married to you if I'm going to come out and live with you, and that would be a good example to our children." And I was like, okay. So we made arrangements to get married June 26th of 1999, and at the Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas. And that day of the wedding, her friends and my friends and some family were out there already, and we decided to have our clothes pressed because they were a little wrinkly. and it was supposed to be a quick service, and they told us it was there a couple hours before the wedding, and we're like, great, and we couldn't find it. No one could find it, and we're like running, panicking, and then we decided, well, we'll just get married in shorts and sandals. What the heck? We're still going to get married. And then I went one more time to look, and they found it way in the back somewhere, the storage area. And we rushed it and put everything in, and everything was in motion. So here I am standing with the chaplain waiting for her to come into the chapel, and all of a sudden as the doors open, all I remember seeing is this brilliant light, like an angel coming in to be with me. And as she approached me, I was like, oh boy, I was nervous and just so much more in love. And so we had a great reception, and and danced, and we also gambled on the side. And so and then she flew back to San Francisco. I went back to Arizona, and we did our honeymoon in Costa Rica, which was so romantic. The honeymoon in Spanish is La Luna de Miel, and that's what people kept calling it, because they say, why are you visiting here? And I just added more to our romantic honeymoon. And so I moved her out to Arizona, and we decided that it was, life was going to be good, and it has been. It's been a roller coaster ride and stuff, but it's, always in love with her, and still to this day, probably more so than ever.
I'm so in love with you. Whatever you want to do is alright with me. 'Cause you make me feel so brand new. And I want to spend my life with you. Let me say